Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson. Today we're listening to 2020 Double Life, Double Murder.
The story begins on a quiet Sunday night in rural Texas, where a husband and wife were sitting on a couch watching TV. Tonight we have our eye on the tropics and tropical depression.
Okay, Lulu, did you get them? Are they coming in the house? Okay, thank you. Thank you, Eddie. Uh, Lulu.
jeans, t-shirt, get her hands dirty. She's a CPA by day, but her heart was in the branching kind of lifestyle. Dennis and Norma were completely opposite. Dennis did more of like the cooking, cleaning, and music. He loved the dance. Dennis had what was called a dolly room. He had a dolly pinball machine, he had dolly wigs, he had dolly dresses. So I remember going into the dolly room for the first time and just never seen anything like it. I mean, it was full dolly, amazing. He was just the funniest person you'll ever meet. Dennis and Norma were completely involved in their kids' lives. Norma, she was working with her kids with 4-H, Future Farmers of America. 4-H and Future Farmers of America involves kids adopting an animal when it's very young and raising it, grooming it, feeding it. You get involved in 4-H when you are like 4 or 5 years old. This is the lifeblood of these communities. Every September, the town has its annual Florida Livestock Show. Charla and Brandon were very successful in raising and showing animals. Brandon, in particular, getting blue ribbons, getting grand champion designations. Brandon would have had Dr. Durandall's gift of talking to the animals, and that's how he excelled at. And these animals thrived under his care. Always had dogs, cats, birds, horses, lambs, rabbits, and sheep, cows. He had a cockatoo. He got it from Norma. Norma had a love for animals like no other.
For Norma and Dennis, their new home in Royce City had plenty of space for their menagerie animals.
They were very busy moving things from their home in Heath, which they still hadn't sold, to Royce City. This was a very much do-it-yourself move, and Norma had a big truck to pull the horse trailer. It's a lot of going back and forth. There's still some animals at the Heath property. This was more rural, and they were set apart from the rest of the community, a little more isolated. For Dennis and Norma, yes, it might have been a tiny step down, but for them, hey, this is worth it.
Charla and Brandon were both hours away.
Every other animal has the right to walk around their property.
Now, Tuesday, which is elements as they
Okay.
normally talk to their parents every day.
Yes, thank you.
Charla and Brandon hadn't heard from their parents since Sunday night. It was now Tuesday.
They're not answering their phone. They're not at work. This is ringing alarm bells.
They call a family friend who goes to the house to check on them, essentially.
The house was locked. Windows were locked. So family members say, do what you have to do, just get in that house. So he did. And he sees the last thing he ever could have imagined. Norma and Dennis slumped over on the couch, covered in blood. They're clearly dead. This friend is in a state of shock. He called back in. If they're both here and they're both dead. And I just remember I couldn't think of what to say to him. I was so shocked. My son Randy came in the house and he just said, sit down. And Randy told me that they had found Dennis and that he was dead. Then they said that Norma was also dead. That's unthinkable. What my mom had decided to do was send somebody to go to Brandon, and then her and Linda were going to go to Charlie. Charlie called me, and I was just a kid, so I answered the phone. I just remember a sound I will never forget. It was almost like a scream. There are certain words that still really hurt, and the hurt in her voice that day hurt. She knew what we did. We all assumed that it was Corbin because they moved into a new place.
Meanwhile, the police walk in and they find an absolutely gruesome murder scene. They don't have to live the couch.
2 law enforcement agencies became involved. You have your local county sheriff, and then you have your Texas Rangers.
I'm trying to get emotional, but sometimes emotions do come into play. I could picture my own parents in that situation. What would I do if I found my parents that way? This kind of hits you hard as an investigator.
The condition that Dennis and Norma were found in is very significant from a law enforcement standpoint.
Norma has been shot multiple times, and there's a huge gash across her neck.
Dennis had been shot in the face once and stabbed 9 times.
This would indicate to me that the person killing Dennis or stabbing Dennis was stabbing him to inflict additional injuries after he was dead. And when that occurs, that shows anger on the killer's part. It looked like the killer had a personal issue with Dennis for some reason.
What begins to take shape very quickly is that the Woodruffs knew their killer, that they trusted their killer.
Dennis still had a cup in his hand that he was using as a spit cup. Neither one of them appeared, to be alarmed or frightened or scared or trying to flee or defend themselves in any way. It's just like somebody walked in and just they're dead.
Nothing appeared to be taken from the house. You've got jewelry, you've got television, you've got computers, laptops. At the scene, that you have things that are valuable that could easily be taken and pawned. So whoever came and did this wasn't interested in taking the valuables.
The house was locked from the inside, which would indicate that the perpetrator or actor had a key or had some way of obtaining access to the house.
The only thing that we knew when we walked out of the autopsy is that we had a large caliber projectile, either a 44 or a 45 caliber projectile. So, although the 45 caliber projectile is not something that's uncommon in the state of Texas, those are rather large projectiles. So police believe that Dennis and Norma had been dead for a couple of days.
Another clue that makes investigators think this was not a stranger is the fact that there is a trail of blood from where the bodies are into the bathroom. That suggests that maybe whoever was in the house was comfortable walking into that bathroom and perhaps cleaning up the crime scene. Everybody gathered in my home. The whole family was in the house. Brandon seemed so upset. He was kind of more relaxed than Charlotte. Charlotte was absolutely a basket case. bad dreams, and that my mom and my dad were going to be there. At this point, the family still had no real details about what happened to Norma and Dennis. But as luck would have it, a reporter knocked on the door of the family members and asked them to comment on the murders of Dennis and Norma.
We didn't know who that might have done that. We couldn't imagine anybody doing that.
There's no one that I could think of that would want to hurt them. Because they were good people.
It was very traumatizing at that point. I think the entire rest of my high school, I slept with a knife under my bed. Before that, I never thought bad things could happen to people because it never happened to us before. As soon as we learned that it was somebody, the questions go through your head like somebody having an affair, a bad neighbor, somebody that came to work on their place. I mean, we went through lots of scenarios.
I couldn't imagine anybody hurting.
The individual definitely had some issue with Dennis, no doubt.
Do you think that it's possible that either one of your parents were having an affair with somebody?
2 years ago, there's one of the brothers.
It's only been 4 days since Norma and Dennis's bodies have been found, and the emotions still very raw. The pain is so deep. This is a tight-knit family, and they've all gathered in Arkansas to pay their respects.
We would come in and fill this church. There was so many people. It was sad. It was honestly like the hardest thing I think I've ever done.
It was very emotional, and this song was really great. It's like one with Dolly when I get where I'm going. It did this and Norma.
Yeah, when I get where I'm going, they'll be the only happy team.
At the field, Brandon and Charlotte had their arms around each other, holding each other up. Charlotte, she was very upset. Brandon was very stoic. I was just in shock. You're numb. That's what you're numb. I would learn to deal with it, but my grief was really bad for a long time. Especially when I went to the cemetery. I lost my mother, dad, my husband, but there's nothing like losing your child.
From day one, the family's in constant contact with investigators on this. The family members all agree to be interviewed by the police, and this is a very important part of an investigation like this.
This crime scene does scream out that it's somebody that knows the family.
They must interview everyone connected with the family because it helps them build a timeline. Timeline is everything. What was happening around that time that will help them glean the events that took the lives of Norma and Dennis?
Brandon and Charlotte are both interviewed by a Texas Ranger named Jeff Collins and by a sergeant at the Hunt County Sheriff's Department named Terry Jones.
The interviews of family members are recorded, and they're in black and white, which, if you go back to 2005, probably is not uncommon in police departments.
It was hard being interviewed because just lost the closest people to you, and you're having to go through and talk about everything.
We have to know as much as we possibly can about your parents and what I call the good, the bad, and the ugly.
It was just painful to even get through because you're not ready to talk about anything yet.
Do you know of any problems that your parents may have been having that, and would they confide in you if they had any
I
problems?
think came home and would, and or say something.
What kind of parents were your parents?
The best.
And was their relationship a very loving relationship? Yeah, like they always did, like, I host girls, and stuff and all that stuff, but they were always together, like always. As investigators are speaking to family and friends, they are able to put together a picture of Norma and Dennis's last weekend.
They were still in the process of moving from the Heath home to the Roy City home. Brandon, her beautiful son, would come down most weekends to help them in that process. So Brandon came down that weekend.
When is the last time that you actually saw your parents? It was we had the other day. We had the house, and I know my dad left at 6. And he got back. It was just right now. And we had dinner, and then I left. Right after you ate? Yeah, because I was already really late, and I had to go feed all the animals at the whole house.
After that, he drives to pick up his friend Robert, who is a classmate at college. Once he picks up Robert, they decide that rather than going right back to college, they're going to go dancing. And that's what they did.
Now, Charlie, Sunday night, was it? Was Norma's mother. We know you're saying on Sunday night, 5 and 9 is when you know that your mother talked to her mother.
Right. And Robert and I are long time. She's been a long time. Sounds like all right. As far as anyone knows, that's the last time anyone had spoken to Norma.
When Charlie gets back to school, she attempts to contact her parents, which is sometime after 11 o'clock that night on Sunday, and she's unsuccessful. Nobody picks up the phone. So investigators are able to hone in on that time between 9 and 11 as sort of being the most likely period of time on Sunday night that they've been murdered.
Do you suspect anybody?
Honestly, I don't, because in my own opinion, I don't know how you think you make it to or something, but I think a freak would have to do this.
If there's anything at all that you can think of that we need to know, or that you can, even if we don't need to know, talk to us, get it out, and then, because it may mean something to us later.
So during the course of their interviews, both Charla and Brandon both bring up the name Mike Etherington. They each suggest to the police that they should talk to Mike.
He was a kid that Brandon hung out with. He was a major fan of him. They had a best friend group, and he was one of the best friends. They were just thick as thieves.
Something went wrong after they graduated and they started to get further and further apart.
By the same time, they was a kid to power of habit. No one ever forget to tell you that. Mike Etherington.
About 2 or 3 weeks ago, and at about 11 o'clock, I get a text message saying I've grown up a lot in high school. Remember my name, Michael Etherington, you're gonna need it one day. Well, that was followed by about 16 to 18 text messages until 4 o'clock in the morning. Detectives asked for the spelling of his name, Etherington.
It turns out investigators were already speaking to him, and Mike Etherington had a lot to say.
It's a big, long story.
Neighbors in this quiet community near Roy City were handled tonight. Day after cops found a couple murdered. Police aren't saying how the couple was murdered, but say the Woodruffs died violently.
As word gets out about this murder, members of the community start calling the police on help. And one of the callers was Mike Etherington, the same person brought up by both Charla and Brandon. Charla and Brandon have no clue that Mike was already talking to one person.
While Mike's first conversation with police wasn't recorded, he comes in and the police statement. We're investigating that murder, and I believe you contacted us.
He's been working with Brandon for years. They grew up together. We were part of the 4-H group over there at the
As a person of FFA, he was president of 4-H.
That's enough. Eddie.
They call themselves the Defenders. These guys were dressed like, they were jeans, they were cowboy boots, so they looked very
Mike Etherington is a fascinating interview. For no other reason than the fact that he comes to the police. They don't have to knock first of all. He essentially describes how Brandon was kind of an attention seeker,
Always the crazy one, you know. I have pictures of the year before senior year. He put on his sister's old cheerleading outfit, had his face paint stuff, and he'd go to the games, and he'd get down and he'd do the clown.
But then Mike tells investigators how he thought Brandon started to change their senior year. He started hanging out with wealthier kids in town instead of their core group.
gone were the cowboy outfits.
Started wearing all his preppy clothes, you know, like Armand, you know, his regular clothes, you know, my shirt's better than yours. It's a $92 Armani shirt and stuff.
Mike tells police that things came to a bit of a head when Brandon got into a fist fight with one of his friends.
There's spikes and stuff all over the ground. Brandon's shirt is torn to shreds.
Here we are in the middle of a murder investigation, and you're hearing about these very juvenile spats that are going on. I'm sure police are wondering, okay, so how does this play into the fact that Brandon's parents are murdered? Things start to take a more serious turn.
He begins to describe some really dark stuff. Mike described that Brandon was cruel to animals.
He goes, I went in, I got a shovel, hit the mom cat over the head. I'm like, where did that kid? He's telling us that he's on Palm Island Bridge.
And in a homicide context, that's hugely significant. Brandon denies ever killing a cat and throwing kittens off an overpass.
Mike has his own version of the relationship between Brandon and Brandon's parents.
He goes, hey, there's blah, blah, blah. He goes, they're always doing this crap to me, and, you know, I just need to go to hell and stuff.
He says that Brandon had a post on MySpace where he said he hated his parents, which they don't.
Yeah, they've been sent on there, you know, my parents are hated, they need to go to hell. Yeah, they wish they just died and go to hell.
Police sit up and take notes of this comment.
One of the things that's interesting is comparing the interviews between Brandon and Charlotte.
What kind of parents? What are your parents?
The way that Brandon describes the family life and Charlotte describes the family life, it's almost like two different families. So Brandon kind of describes this idyllic relationship with his parents and how they never fought, and Charlotte describes that their family had issues, like every other family, that their dad sometimes wasn't on his best behavior.
My dad and Alexander had very bad temper. They accused him.
And she says that Brandon inherited that temper. Charlotte tells police that when the two were little, there was emotional and sometimes even physical abuse. And she describes how he would beat her with a buggy whip.
Lulu, did you get them? Did you get them? Okay, thank you, sweetheart. Thank you. Thank you, mommy, baby.
Charlotte says that as they got older, the relationship got better.
When you have people tell you that there's an abuse issue, you listen to that very intently.
Brandon is not only just to try to put together a list of suspects, but also to eliminate Brandon as a potential suspect instead of establishing a timeline. you think probably the next box you're headed towards that?
So far, Brandon is just answering all the questions, and then Brandon told us to us.
Now, an eyewitness that saw you and Keith at 11 p.m. Sunday night. The neighbor has contacted us and said on Sunday night, I saw Brandon at the Heath address.
Apparently, a neighbor around the Heath house tells police that he specifically remembers going to bed and he hears the
Lulu. Lulu, there's no.
So this raises huge questions. Brandon said he was at the Heath house at 7:20, 7:30. The neighbor says it was 10 or 11 p.m.
Really, anything happen to you? No. There's later for that too. Like, there's, I don't know, that's crazy. I know, but I've seen crazy stuff happen. Sometimes something snaps, okay? I'm asking you, Brandon, straight up. If something has to do with your parents, get right. That's why you get here. But that's it.
Okay, so you're telling us straight up.
I'm just not gonna really just.
You did not kill your parents.
No. That's crazy.
After they interviewed him, he was a prime suspect. He couldn't believe that they think he did it. I felt the same way, the way when Brandon felt.
Police get a phone call from someone who's missing a gun, and they quickly learn that it could be the same type of gun and the same caliber of gun they believe was used to commit this murder. Brandon has been dating a high school classmate named Morgan Lee on and off for 2 years.
They were kind of like an it couple. When they went anywhere, they made a statement because they were dressed to the max always. From what I saw, he treated her very well. Her family was very loving of her and him together.
Morgan's mother, Michelle Lee, really adored Brandon. I loved Brandon to pieces. I really felt he was a good guy.
Brandon and Morgan, they loved horses, but they rode horses together.
He could let his stallion horse get in the arena and they would literally play. Brandon would run after him and the horse would spin around and then he'd chase Brandon.
Brandon came home from college that weekend, and on Saturday, he went to visit Morgan.
Morgan needed a lamb, so Morgan and Brandon went on this big adventure where they went and bought a lamb. It was kind of early. Morgan still sound asleep, so I said, well, just walk and wake her up. And pretty soon they come down and, they're laughing and cutting up and acting like they do.
Days later, when Brandon's parents are found dead, Michelle and Morgan are fiercely by his side. They meet him at the airport when he flies home from school, and they drive him hours to be with his family in Arkansas.
Michelle and Morgan Lee, who, by their accounts, they say that Brandon was visibly upset that he was just destroyed by the news. It looked like he kind of cried himself out.
Sometime after Michelle Lee discovers that something is missing from her home.
We had old Western gun and cowboy decorations in the house.
I mean, this is classic Texas, right? So they've got some decorations, which include Colt Long 45 handgun that's on display, along with live ammunition.
It was, oh my gosh, old as dirt. The gun wasn't loaded, but the bullets were in the belt that went around the perimeter. I didn't even know the gun would work. It looked like it was right out of, Tombstone or something. But sure enough,
like that when you do that to his parents. And it's possible that it could have been stolen prior to Brandon being there by someone else. I had a lot of inner struggle with, do I share this with law enforcement people? But again, is that busy? And I had to make a decision quickly.
She told us that she had in her possession an old Western style holder that had the bullet loops in the holster, but no gun.
Michelle's first conversation with police isn't recorded, but eventually she comes back in, and the police take a videotaped statement.
I said, first and foremost, I want you to know that I love Brandon Woodruff, and I don't want to appear as though I'm accusing him of anything.
It just really bothered me that I had a missing gun and that Brandon had been at our house the same weekend that his parents died.
It was absolutely the hardest thing I've ever done.
I don't want you to think that I think Brandon did anything because I'm telling you.
She felt guilty for coming forward with this information and wanted to protect Brandon and spoke very highly of Brandon, and then would turn around and say, but this is strange.
Tests were done on the slug found in the couch with bullets that still remained in the Lee home, and those experts said these are consistent. So the odds are reasonable that the weapon is the weapon used to shoot them. But to absolutely corroborate that, you couldn't do it until you actually found the weapon.
The police at this point were putting together an affidavit for Brandon's arrest.
Detectives have cleared Charla, as well as people brought up in the investigation, including Mike Etherington and the woman who was supposedly obsessed with Dennis.
In this case, the fact that Brandon had some pretty big holes in his timeline, according to his interview with the Texas Rangers, it combined with the fact that he had been in a home that had a gun stolen from it. That was pretty much it for him.
It was just like a normal morning. I was getting ready for school, and then all I remember was just a swarm of police coming into our house. I just heard my grandmother scream. I said, what the world are you doing? I told her that we go do it. I believed her. I had the radio on in the car, and I heard that Brandon Woodruff had been arrested. It just gave me goosebumps. The Brandon that I knew, I would never imagine that he would harm his parents, let alone kill them.
I was shocked. Never in my life would I imagine my little brother would be arrested for anything, much less the murder of our parents.
I do not think he did it. They made a mistake, and it's going to be cleared up soon. It was the most horrible thing to see Brandon with his wrist shackled. He had his ankles shackled. Because Brandon always was the one on the other end. He was the one that could put a collar on any type of dog and have him sit, stay, come at his command. And now Brandon was the one that was in chains. The family started splitting. Immediately, the Woodruff side definitely believed there was some kind of mix-up. The Johnson side, I don't know at what point, but at some point, they very much believed that he did it.
You have yet to hear the full story.
There were wild revelations still to come during the investigation of this case.
Investigators called me and said, are you sitting down? I wish I had been sitting down. of a husband and wife who were found dead inside their rural home in Roy City.
This is the house where the Woodrows were murdered.
Brandon, I'm scared for you. They have a man against you. And you're screwed.
They had rumor, innuendo, and suspicion, but they had no hard evidence.
I hate to tell you this, Mike, but I'm just about ready to strangle you.
Are you sitting down?
We found where Brandon was getting all of his money from.
She had these two separate lives that Brandon was working so hard to maintain. At some point, those two lives had to collide.
Brandon was wonderful with animals. He's almost like a horse whisperer. Brandon would ride on his horse a little more fun and free.
He had different ways of doing things with his horses. It's just almost magic. They jived. They were together. He's got the horse named for him. He's doing this, the horse's name. If he was over 17, 18, he was doing that.
He had the patience and the understanding of his animals to deal with them on their terms.
He had a love for horses, and the horses knew. And he tried to do them.
But now, 19-year-old Brandon is behind bars, accused of killing his own parents.
But it's a horrible situation. You can't believe it. But he always assured me, that it's going to be okay. They're going to find out the truth, and I'm going to find them.
Brandon's supporters say he shouldn't have been arrested in the first place. They point to Brandon's MySpace page, and they say that nowhere does it say that he hates his parents like Mike Etherington claimed.
There is no evidence that that statement that Mike made about him saying that ever happened.
Ranger Collins puts Mike Etherington's statement about the MySpace page and probable cause affidavit, and they go look at it and says, I love my parents, LOL, seriously, I do.
Investigators reach out to MySpace to see if the page could have been altered, but they don't keep records to show if anything was changed.
Now they need to go back to Mike and say, wait, where's this post where Brandon supposedly said, I hate my parents, I wish they were dead?
Supposedly it had been found, my parents had been illegal to help, and they just died of it. Well, now you're saying supposedly, but you said that was all. Because I did not see with my eyes. You think this is like,
This is more than a huge problem for the investigators because they've included that in their affidavit for probable cause that Brandon committed these murders.
So it makes sense. He hates his parents and wishes they're dead. We call that a clue in the death of somebody's parents, right? But then they find out that Mike has heard that Brandon had put that up, which is completely different thing. That's hearsay. That's unusable.
Mike, here's the thing, I want you to understand, because you're on the telephone and I was in the room on the speakerphone listening to you give out that information, and that information was very matter of fact, first-hand knowledge, and that's not what you're telling me right now. This is not a good thing.
I've seen all that on tape. They knew they shouldn't have ever arrested Raymond in the start.
I mean, I hate to tell you this, Mike, but I'm just about ready to strangle you. I understand. I just want to step out for just a moment, and I just want to regain my composure.
This investigator is so upset, and for good reason. Yes, a posting on MySpace, I hate my parents and wish they were dead, would be very important to prove your case, but it's still a good case without it.
So at this point in the investigation, it is absolutely critical that law enforcement speak to as many people as possible. This includes his friends in the area as well as his friends at the university.
Detective Eric Gentry said that Brandon's dagger was missing from his dorm room.
So he had this dagger, kind of medieval looking dagger, and he brought that to school and had it in the closet.
Was there something?
Logic food, no problem.
Now you've got a connection to Brandon with a Colt 45 revolver, and you've got a connection with Brandon to at least one knife, and they're both missing.
Abilene Christian University. This is a very strict school. It's a Christian school. There are rules, no drugs, no alcohol, no sex of any kind, and there are cookies. He had a lot of friends at ACU. He got involved in the theater department. You haven't seen how fresh their families? He did some little skits between each act.
I say y'all are all looking fantastic today.
He loved it. In fact, he really wanted to get involved in that theater and drama here at ACU. Brandon was never that good a student, but he always got by. At college, he began staying out too late, sleeping in, missing classes. His grades were falling.
You missed 3 or 4 classes. You're just out of class. You don't get credit for anything. And that's how Brandon's lucky now.
My name is Jansen Barnett, and in October of 2005, I was a student at the University of North Texas, and I was dating a boy named Robert. He was attending ACU, and that's where he met Brandon.
Police are interested in talking to Jansen and Robert, who were both with Brandon the night of October 16th. They say Brandon was supposed to give Robert a ride back to Abilene Christian University that night.
Sunday comes, and he calls my daddy up over the leave, and around 6 or so. I was like, okay. Then he called again. He's like, well, it's gonna be a couple more hours.
He knew that I would be calling him. He wasn't answering his phone for whatever reason. We were just kind of frustrated.
I called him again, and he answered, and he was kind of, kind of getting caught in something, breathing like, getting excited or something. It was pretty hard.
Brandon finally tells Robert Martinez, you know what, I'm not going to pick you up at your girlfriend's house. I'm going to pick you up at a Denny's outside of Dallas.
I think by the time we finally met up with Brandon, it was probably between 10:30, 11.
But that's not what Brandon told police just days earlier.
So you think probably by 8 o'clock then you're headed towards Denton?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's one thing to be off a few minutes, it's another to be off 3 hours. And that's clearly what you have here.
I would have never questioned Sunday evening until he got arrested. Okay, I wonder if this is why he wasn't answering.
And Brandon did something else later that night that also asked police. This is the house where the Woodrows were murdered. Brandon says he had dinner with his parents that night, but then we know that Brandon's mother, Norma, was still alive at 9:15 because she made a phone call to her mother at that time. You had several hours of missing time that Brandon was not accounting for. And it was during those hours of missing time that the murder was committed.
The timeline the state put out didn't make any sense because they're saying, okay, we're assuming that the Woodruffs were killed around 9:15. It would have taken Brandon 23 minutes if he had left. If they had died right at 9:15, and Brandon immediately got in his car and drove toward the Heath house. That doesn't work because they also said somebody had to clean up the crime scene.
Brandon got to the Denny's in Dallas at 11, and Robert Martinez is saying, what's going on? So they end up going to Alex Rule's house in Plano.
And y'all hung out for a little bit, but you
Yeah, I got a little bit of my dad's house, and then we went to a club station 4. What time did you get there? Around 12. 12:50. So we all kind of rushed off, and everyone was all over the room, so I didn't see much that night or anything, but we left about like 2:30.
This is kind of the weird part. Brandon drove this Dodge Ram pickup. Just a single cab. He got back that Monday and he had a new truck. And
What kind of trip?
Chevy 2500, I think, or Chevy 1500.
Did you ever see him in this truck?
No, but he had told me he got a new truck. You know, I got this new truck, and Tuesday we rode around it. Just like trying a new truck. And so we went out and rode around.
It was the new Chevy 4, was a Chevy or something. Because that was his truck. Yeah, he said it was his.
That was Laura's truck, which meant you don't take this without permission. We only use this when I know.
When police ask Alex if anything stands out from that night, he describes a strange incident when they're driving home.
There's two suitcases in the back. I have a small stuff in there, and I go out and braid it. So, yeah. Did he really? He was definitely open it, turned around, and he really went out face forward. Yeah, he's driving. He's driving. So we're like, turn around, calm down, walk over, your suitcase just drive.
The investigators, when they heard about Brandon being so protective of his bag, they assumed that maybe there's a murder weapon in there. They got possession of that bag, and they sent it straight to the lab. There was nothing that would indicate that Brandon had any involvement in the crime.
What's he afraid of? It later turns out that there's something else in that bag that he's desperate for certain people not to learn about.
So that's why'd you forget like that? He said he just had some gang stuff in there or something that he didn't want us to see because he said probably straight, but didn't want to, Now that's something too, because he's telling us that Dom straight up had a girlfriend and all that, but we're hearing from our friends, that he is giving. Which, I mean, we don't care one way or another. But I mean, if you're gonna lie about something little like that, then are you gonna lie about something bigger? I mean, if you can lie something about your sexual orientation, then you ought to be able to lie about something big.
To make a statement like that is just totally ridiculous. Everybody lies. They lie, especially about sex. Are you kidding me?
Is he lying, or is he just still coming out of the closet?
If you've known anyone who has struggled with coming out, it's one of the hardest things to do. It takes a monumental amount of strength.
I've noticed Brandon dressing like a little different. And I noticed that he was like a little more feminine. I was like, I've always known.
Now, one person in Brandon's family who appears not to know about his sexuality is his sister, Charla.
I said, Brandon, okay. He said, no.
And what she says next will forever change their relationship.
I said, you're part of me. There's no doubt in my mind that you have nothing to do with this.
Days after Brandon is arrested and charged with murdering his parents, his sister Charla visits him in his jail cell.
I found out from someone else that you wanted to see me. So I went out there and then I grabbed his phone.
It's an emotional conversation. Charlo seems to be struggling with what authorities say are inconsistencies in Brandon's timeline and the parts of his life that he hid from her.
I think mainly what she confronted him about was he lying to her about being gay. I feel like she probably did feel some betrayal.
After confronting Brandon, she immediately reaches out to police.
Now you said that you went down and visited him
Yeah.
before you came up here.
I said, Brandon, are you gay? He said, no. I said, Brandon, gay. And he said, no.
Charlotte basically says, look, if my brother has been lying to me about his sexuality, he could be lying about anything.
I said, a lot of people are saying you're gay. If you lie about little things, but you're telling the truth about the big thing, they're going to know you're lying. They're not going to believe you. You need to tell the truth. They've already marked you as a liar. And I said, Brandon, I'm here for you. They have evidence against you, and you're screwed. You have no doubt in mind that you did it.
She kind of launched into this false tautology. Well, if you're lying to people about being gay, Brandon, they're going to say you're going to lie about the big things too.
We don't care if he's gay or not. That doesn't have anything to do with anything.
He said he was lying about the whole thing.
I think Brandon's mindset was not only scared, I think confused. He's finding out that people that Brandon thought he could rely on were kind of backing away from him a little bit.
Obviously, I don't want to lose my brother, but if that has to happen, it has to happen. More than that, I don't want to lose my own life. And if they let him out, I'm gone.
Why do you say that?
Because if he really did this, I don't know who he is.
According to family and friends, Brandon underwent a major transformation in the year before his parents were murdered.
When Brandon came back from Abilene Christian College, Brandon was different, a lot different. His appearance was pristine. He had a gorgeous tan. He had highlighted his hair. Morgan was like, wow, this is different.
He said that he would be in the next book on Ronnie Kellogg. And so I know my dad was looking forward to that. He was really proud.
In fact, at some point, he even mentions that he's flying to New York because of some modeling thing. It sort of builds up this image as a model, a glamorous picture that he had painted of affluence and success.
Freshman year in college, Brandon is really focused on presenting himself as coming from wealth. He displays his very expensive clothes. Problem is, Dennis and Norma Woodruff don't come from money. They literally had to downsize their house in order to pay for the college.
Brandon is 18 years old. He's going off to college. It's a private college. He is with some wealthier people on a daily basis in college. He wanted to fit in.
He was somehow pouring all these clothes, and he would go, and he would spend $300-$400 in the mall. He would spend crazy amounts of money. And I was simply getting lost.
When asked where that money was coming from, all of his friends said, well, he's modeling. And he's going to New York, and he's going to Florida, and he's doing these modeling gigs.
Investigators called me and said, are you sitting down? We found where Brandon was getting all of his money from.
What we found was that Brandon had been going to Florida, not modeling, but he was part of these productions. He was working, but it was just a different industry than what everybody was led to believe. That different industry that Ranger Collins is talking about, Brandon was getting paid to appear in gay pornographic films.
I was very much shocked when I found out that Brandon was doing the movies. It's one thing to be gay, but it's another thing to be portrayed in a film. Brandon did have extra cash that he was having to somehow justify. Given he's at Abilene Christian University, one, he's not going to want to advertise he's making porn, and two, he's not going to want to advertise he's making gay porn. So to explain his money or his clothing, I think he thought, well, it was kind of like modeling. I think it was a little bit of a white lie fib on his part because I don't think he wanted to be expelled.
Then in June of 2008, more than 2 years after the murders, Brandon's Aunt Kathy makes a startling discovery in the barn at the Woodruff's old house.
Today is June 12, 2008. We're at Mark's Train
time of the murders, Dennis and Norma were in the process of moving out of the house in Heath.
It was a very long clean-out process.
That barn was a mess. There was a ton of crap in there.
Somewhere among all these boxes in a very bottom box, she found a very small dagger like. She found it and she got to turn it in. Of course, it just made trouble for Brandon.
Police knew Brandon was at the Heath home because the next door neighbor saw him there. Brandon admitted he was there. They searched the place. They sent 8 guys down there and a canine team, multiple agencies, but they didn't find anything of evidentiary value.
This dagger is unique. It's ornate and it's almost like a pirate dagger. When they forensically examine it, they find human blood on the dagger, and that human blood is Dennis Witter's DNA. The medical examiner could not say one way or the other if this is the murder weapon, but Eric Gentry told investigators that dagger is the same one Brandon had in their dorm room. There are so many questions in this case that only Brandon can answer, so I paid him a visit. And for the first time, Brandon gives us his side of the story. Brandon, if you didn't kill your parents, then who did it? Finally, in March of 2009, 3.5 years after the murder, the trial is underway.
Brandon was charged with capital murder. The state waived the election to seek the death penalty. So that meant if Brandon was found guilty, he was facing life in prison without parole.
Based on the evidence that was presented to us, it was very clear that it was someone that the Woodruffs knew they were comfortable with in their home, just based on the crime scene photo.
Our strategy was to chip away at the state's case by pointing out at every opportunity that they had no case. They had rumor, innuendo, and suspicion, but they had no hard evidence.
The state paints a picture of Brandon as a liar, living 2 lives, deceiving both his friends and his family.
Brandon's mother had a truck that they talked about throughout the trial. This was her prized possession, was this truck. So when Brandon went back to school the night of the murder, he told all his friends that his mother gave him her truck.
Another motive that's presented by the prosecution is the financial motive here. Brandon is a free spender. He projects himself as coming from wealth, which he is not. He's about to fail out of school, and this gravy train that he's been on, where his parents are essentially supporting his college education, is about to come to a crashing end.
My dad had told him that he had 1 semester to do right, and if he failed out of school, then he was going to go. My parents weren't going to fund him going up there and just being a fucker. He was talking to his sister on the phone, and he said, "I have a meeting tonight with Brandon, and we're going to bring up all of these questions that I have for Brandon. His big lifestyle, his daily raise, and that's the day that all stops happening." The Hunt County Sheriff's Department is investigating the murders of a husband and wife who were found dead inside their rural home.
You have these 2 separate lives that Brandon was working so hard to maintain. Just the persona over here and the persona over here. At some point, those 2 lives had to collide. It's my belief that collision took place in the residence on the night that Dennis and Norma were murdered.
In the flesh, they don't have to make them count.
There's a lot of theories, like the double life, the financial, and all the rest of it. This case comes down to the timeline, and it comes down to Brandon Woodruff lying about it. From the perspective of the prosecutors in this case, these people are murdered between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m., and Brandon Woodruff cannot account for his whereabouts. Brandon's neighbor, Randall Moss, who lived right here says he saw Brandon outside his house during the 10 o'clock news that night. That would mean he was here between 10 and 10:30. When you factor in the drive time, Brandon would have had between 20 and 45 minutes approximately to commit the murders. When the jury breaks to deliberate, they need to ask themselves, did Brandon have enough time to commit those brutal murders of both his parents, clean up the crime scene, and then get to that house in Heath? The jury deliberated for 5 hours.
I remember standing up for them to give the verdict and thinking that it was going to be not guilty. When it was guilty, my grandma just broke down and ran out, and I just ran with her. I did not want her by herself after that.
When it said guilty, it cut through me like a knife, but there's nothing you can do.
He was sentenced to life without possibility of parole in Texas State Prison. It's 5:30 in the morning, still dark out there. I'm about to take off on a 2.5-hour drive from Dallas to a state prison in East Texas. Brandon Dale Woodruff now calls this place his home. He's finally agreed to talk to us and tell us his side of the story. Yes, sir. How long have you been in here?
About 15 years till 16 years total.
What has life been like in prison all these years?
Some days it's good days, some days it's bad. It's prisons. You just kind of basically wake up every day and you hope for the best. So,
What is the real story?
that I'm innocent. I did not kill my parents at all.
Brandon, I've interviewed a lot of people in prison and in jail, and so often they say, I didn't do it, I didn't do it. Why should we believe you?
I think that you should look at the totality of the evidence.
Brandon pushes back against the accusation that he purposely lied about his timeline on the night of October 16th.
I told a lot of people that I really couldn't consider myself staying there for a couple of hours, but I fed the cats, I fed the dogs, I got ready to go that night. So maybe, it did take a little bit longer. I wasn't one to sit here and look at my watch every moment of every day. So I did the best I could. I told them where I was at, I told them what I did, and that's just the truth.
But what about the story that Brandon wanted his mother's truck?
My mother would never, ever let my brother drive that truck to Abilene.
I mean, the neighbors said that I drove it all the time. I got a ticket in that truck, and now all of a sudden, this truck is this huge deal, and it's like, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Brandon, almost 3 years after the murders, someone finds a dagger in your old parents' house.
Yes, sir. I don't know of how anybody could actually look at and I'm calling it not a dagger, but a sword, because it's about this big.
Did you use that sword to kill your
No,
parents?
sir. No, sir.
Did you know it existed?
No, sir.
Did you use that gun that was taken from your girlfriend's house to kill your parents?
Absolutely not. No, sir.
Brandon admits that he was struggling academically at ACU, but he says that was no reason to kill his parents. You had dropped some of your classes at the university, and investigators said that your parents were angry and that you killed them because they were going to cut you off.
Yeah, no, sir. Not absolutely not true. School just wasn't my thing, but never once did my parents ever tell me they were going to cut me off. Never once did my parents say, this is your last chance.
Brandon has spent his entire adulthood behind bars. To this day, there is a strong group of supporters who say that jury got it wrong, and Brandon is an innocent man.
Brandon's case has about as many red flags as you could ever expect to see in a wrongful conviction.
Brandon Brandon was wrongfully judged and murdered now. I know Brandon didn't do that. Someone else is letting him take the blame for it.
In April of this year, a small but vocal group went to deliver an online petition to the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals asking that Brandon be granted a new trial.
Basically, just asking them to go ahead and reopen the petition, vacate the judgment, or they'll realize that Brandon is innocent. Don't set him free.
Brandon's case has about as many red flags as you could ever expect to see in a wrongful conviction. The theory of the state's case was Brandon is leading a double life. He is portraying to his conservative friends at college that he is a straight man, that he has a loving girlfriend back home, when in fact he has boyfriends.
Do you think you were charged and prosecuted and eventually convicted in large part because you're gay?
I do believe that that's a major factor. I felt like the investigators were able to use that. They were saying, well, did you know that he was dancing in gay bars? Did you know that he had a boyfriend?
When we did the general voir dire of the panel, we were asking about people's views on homosexuality. I'm not entirely certain you get entirely honest answers.
$4,000 question that they asked was, do you feel or think that being homosexual or gay is immoral? Guess what? In 2005, people still felt that homosexuality was immoral because 8 of the 12 jurors on Brandon's case specifically said it was immoral.
Lulu, did you get them? Lulu, did you get them?
In 2008, the members of the jury said that they thought homosexuality was morally wrong. Do you think that played into your conviction?
I think that's part of it. Which is sad. It's sad that you actually even have to ask that question. That does not make you who you are. Your sexual identity, your orientation, none of that makes. I'm Brandon. I'm not gay, Brandon. I'm not, straight, Brandon. I'm just Brandon.
ABC News spoke with several jurors, and they told us that when it came to deciding guilt or innocence, Brandon's sexuality was not a factor for the jury.
I don't recall that issue coming up as we were deliberating of anyone saying, well, I think he's guilty because he's gay. That wasn't even a discussion.
No. That would be unfair.
The prosecution's case against Brandon relied heavily on a timeline they say proved that Brandon was at the scene of the murders that night. The Innocence Project points to cell phone records they say further compress the window of opportunity to commit the murder.
The friend that was in Dallas waiting for Brandon to come pick him up, he calls at 9:49. We know that at 10:10 that Morgan called Brandon. So if you look at these times where Brandon is talking to people, then literally the only way that could have happened between 9:20 and 11 o'clock is if Brandon kills his parents at the most 19 minutes. Like, he has to act fast. Or he is taking calls during the course of committing these murders. That's the only way the timeline makes sense. That he does something to one of his parents and then takes a call and chats with Morgan like nothing's wrong. In addition to the timeline, the other biggest potential breakthrough in this case is DNA evidence from Norma. In Norma's hand, police found a clump of longer blonde hairs. That would normally be an indicator that she had somehow grabbed her attacker and that she pulled his or her hair, and that's the hair that's in her hand. Law enforcement never tested that hair. And one of the things that we've been fighting for in this case is trying to figure out who has that hair because we want it tested.
The idea of testing the hair that's located in or around her hand is a very savvy move by the defense because it can be hugely significant for an appellate court in determining whether or not Brandon gets a new trial. The Innocence Project has brought Brandon new hope, but Cammy's relationship with his sister
ever be healed? The pair haven't spoken in 17 years.
I mean, my own sister told the ranger, well, if he could lie about something so small, he can lie about something big, and it's not true.
It still brings tears to your eyes.
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
If you could talk to Charla right now, what would you tell her?
But I really don't even believe it. I've gone back and forth over the years, but mainly my heart stayed. I don't think he did it. We all still are a big family unit. We all love one another. If people can live with what they think, I can live with what I think because I know the truth.
Lulu. Lulu. Lulu.
It's hard living every day without knowing
Well, we're going to say that's it for now. See you in a bit.